Welcome to Behind the Muscle podcast. Today's guest is an IFBB pro bodybuilder. Today's guest is Dusty Hanshaw. Dusty, welcome to the podcast.
Appreciate you having me on.
For sure. So I like to start each podcast, Dusty, by asking all my guests the same two questions. So the first question I have for you is, who are a few of your favorite bodybuilders of all time?
Ooh, it's an extensive list. All time, Dorian was kind of the beginning for me, which it was before I was really into bodybuilding, but just seeing him as a kid, I think I was drawn to just that freakish, it was one of those things where you'd pick up back then there was magazines on the shelves all the time at the grocery store. And anytime I saw him on the cover, I would look into it and, was definitely drawn to it. And then after that, when I finally started getting into bodybuilding was after Ronnie had already started winning. So he played a huge role in kind of just the addiction, once again, to the freakiness. And from there, I think I started to adapt because I understood my abilities and lack thereof at the highest level. So I became more a fan of Jay, but it was more on the business side and understanding how to make money as a bodybuilder, not just the stage.
Excellent. So the second question, Dusty, at what age did you start lifting weights? And then why did you start lifting weights at that age?
I started lifting, kind of tinkering like most kids around 16, 17. I was playing hockey at the time. So it was primarily for speed and strength in that sport. And then I was playing hockey at a pretty high level. I ended up getting a shoulder surgery when I was 18, almost 19, that kind of ended that. And I became just kind of like a go to the gym kind of person. I did a show around 19 years old, but it was very much just, screw it, let's see what this is. Truly hated every second of it. Said during it that I would never do it again. I just wanted to finish what I started. Did the show, and then for whatever reason, I kind of liked it, but I stepped away for a while and was just training. And I started really taking it seriously when I was about 26.
Very cool. And we're gonna unpack all that. Before we get to kind of the bodybuilding and the business side of things, I kind of like to get the backstory of my guests. So if you don't mind talking about, where did you grow up, Dusty? You already mentioned hockey. Just paint that picture of some of those earlier childhood years up to about high school, and then we'll move on from there.
Yeah, so I've lived all over the place. I was born in Washington State. Moved from Spokane, where I was born, to Seattle. Ended up moving to just outside of St. Louis, actually, O'Fallon, Illinois, which is just on the other side of the river there. Which is funny. I actually would have ended up in the same high school as Kevin Jordan went to. We found out down the line, but I had moved away by then. But that's where I started playing hockey. That was kind of a funny thing, because it was just something I just decided one day I wanted to do. Told my dad, hey, I want to get into ice hockey. And he was like, okay, I don't know where this came from, but what the hell? So he signed me up into a league, like a learn to play kind of league. And for whatever reason, I had never skated before or anything, but I was good at it. So I only did that for 2 practices before they moved me into a regular league. Played one weekend in their, like, what they call their B league there. And then they immediately forced me to go up to the highest league. And that was kind of how hockey went from the jump. And my family moved to Arizona, which is where I've been for the longest time. Played hockey there for a couple of years. Actually, surprisingly, have really good hockey there. But I reached a point where if I wanted to go to the highest level, I knew I needed to move. So at 16, I actually moved out from my parents' house, moved to Utah. I had a basement apartment in a family's house, and I finished high school there, played hockey, juniors there for the Golden Eagles, and then had a knee surgery when I was 16, which had no effect. It was just a scope, no big deal. And then, like I said, at 18, I did my shoulder. That was supposed to be a fix and come back kind of situation, but it was never quite the same. So I just realized after doing some therapy, and actually in Arizona, I was back there. I played in I hate to use the word because it wasn't accurate at the time, but they called it a celebrity. We call it like the D-list celebrity type of game. for like a fallen officer to raise some money, and there was no hitting or anything like that. And I was sore for days, and I was like, all right, so this is over. And that was kind of the beginning of the next steps, you know?
If you don't mind me asking, what was the reason behind you moving so much when you're younger? Were you from a military family or was it something else?
No, my dad worked actually, funny enough with what I do, he worked for Hostess, like the Twinkies, donuts, all that stuff. And he, every time he would get a new position, they would offer him a job and move him somewhere else. Um, and at the time, Hostess also owned Wonder Bread and those things. So he was running one type of company when we were in St. Louis, and then actually a bread company is what brought him to Arizona, which St. Louis is a great place to be from, in my opinion, meaning don't go back. So, so we, moved to Arizona, and then that kind of became home for me. Like that's always been kind of home base. Even as I've moved around, I usually keep a house there, still now.
Very cool. What's something that you kind of obviously we're from our parents, so there's a lot, but in terms of like maybe something that your parents told you growing up, or something that you kind of watched them and you learned from them, is there something when I ask you that kind of pops to your mind specifically from your parents from childhood?
Yeah, I mean, I actually, it's funny. A lot of people like to have I'll call it the from nothing story and the self-made situation. I was actually the opposite of that. I had a very fortunate childhood. My parents were financially well off, did well. But the one thing that my parents did very, very well was I was shown the good life at the highest level. And then actually on my 18th birthday, I was informed that the credit cards didn't work anymore. There was $1,000 in a bank account, and my dad told me, he said, I showed you the good life, now go get it. And that was it. That was the end of any help from them. But actually, obviously, that was probably their greatest help. And in hindsight, it's funny, but looking at it, I realized it seems crazy. Like, I don't think I would do the same thing, quite honestly, like, because it could have went either way. But in my case, it worked because I really do like the better things. And I saw how they earned them because my dad actually was a from nothing to something kind of guy. So it wasn't hard to figure out. And my parents were both very blunt, so for example, when I got done with school and I knew I wasn't going to play hockey anymore, of course, the initial thought is go to college. And actually, my dad told me not to. He was like, your personality is not to be employed. So you should probably start a business, learn a trade, do something, which I don't think there's many parents on the planet, especially in my age group, that are like, no, 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 skip college. It's not for you. you
For
know,
sure.
so it worked out, so I definitely learned, I mean, to answer the question blatantly or bluntly, is just work. Work will separate you. And I've never been the most talented at anything I've done. That's something and it's not to say that I haven't had good genetics or some sort of advantages, but never absolutely the best. And I definitely learned that work can cover a lot of those gaps in life. And I think that that's something that gets lost these days. Everyone's looking for the easy way, not the better way.
Perfect. So one more thing I want to ask, and then we'll kind of transition from those younger years, Dusty, but hockey, what kind of pulled you into hockey? Was it maybe just the immediacy of you being really good at it? Or was it something else that kind of like pulled you in and you're like, hey, I like this and I'm going to continue to pursue it?
You know what it was is I don't know what started at the very first time because it was so out of left field. I mean, they had obviously the St. Louis Blues there, but I mean, they also had baseball and everything else. But I think that anything that you naturally gravitate towards and you do well with, it's easier to get excited about it. And once again, it was something that I realized very quickly that the harder I worked at it, I was rewarded very, very quickly because obviously my genetic talent was there. So that was really exciting. And I really did love that. Plus, there was something about, because of how I was treated at a young age, I got addicted to the idea of not being normal. And I think that kind of played a role in wanting to get into bodybuilding things because there's something about just being different, you know, and it was very, very early on that I could see I was very different when it came to that sport. But yeah, it was just a rush, really, really fun, and something that my parents supported from day one. So like, you know, I played in a men's league when I was 13 years old, and some of the games would start at like 11 p.m. and you would play, and then, you know, that some of them even open ice times where you'd rent the ice for 2 hours. So my mom would go out there knowing, all right, we're gonna be there till 1 in the morning. And then the guys would be like, hey, should we rent another hour? And you just throw more money in and stay. And, you know, my mom was like, oh shit, okay. Like, you know, but I could have played. I mean, and I used to play street hockey during the day. It was truly my first addiction where the only thing that ended the playing was if I couldn't see the ball anymore outside or if we didn't have ice. That was it.
Perfect. So, I love that your dad basically just said, hey, I don't think your personality fits college. Cause like you said, that is, probably not something that a lot of parents are going to say to their kids, but so talk about, once you graduated high school, what did those immediate years post high school look like, Dusty?
Yeah, so I had just, like I said, found out. I mean, I never had a plan B. I was going to play professional hockey. I wasn't concerned about anything else. I mean, I did well in school and everything, but so actually, that was abrupt when I first realized I wasn't doing hockey anymore. I didn't have, you know, any plans of what I could do competitively or anything like that. I just went out and got a job, and I worked at a car lot, parking cars. You know what I mean, at a car dealership, actually, in the service department. Eventually, I actually got an opportunity to learn how to tint windows, and I started tinting windows. And that job actually was probably one of the highest teaching jobs for me because I started making a lot of money for a kid that age. At the time, that was the largest Dodge dealership in the world as far as volume. So I probably was making upwards of $80,000 at 20 years old, which was, and a lot of that was cash, quite honestly. So, you know, it was a beautiful thing, but I hated the job. It was super monotonous. Every day seemed the same. And I just had this view, and nothing against people who work at car dealerships or work on cars, but I felt like a lot of them got stuck by the money because it's good money, you know what I mean? But I didn't feel like a lot of people were excited to go to work. Um, and I wasn't excited to go to work. I started to realize that Sunday around 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon on my day off, I started to dread Monday. And my actually I got married when I was 20. So my wife at the time told me, she was like, we should quit. And I'm like, quit and do what? Like, I got no degree, I got no talents. This is a lot of money, you know? And she's like, oh, well, just quit, do something else. So at the time, I had been, I had started lifting weights more. And actually, my very first trainer when I was playing hockey ran a local supplement store. So I went in there, asked him if I could get a job, but he knew what I did. And he's like, bro, I can pay you $8.50 an hour. And I said, that's fine. I just want to do something I want to do. So he said yes, quit my job, started working over there. And that was kind of the beginning of learning supplements, learning food. And I think it kind of drawing me more into this side of the game. And I worked there for, I want to say 5 years, just worked my way up. And then I actually ended up leaving there to start training clients one-on-one because I wanted more money. But I ended up back in that business because the owner of that business offered to sell it to me when I was 26. So I bought 5 retail stores at 26 years old and was back in the game, so to speak.
So, you mentioned earlier, Dusty, that you did your first bodybuilding competition at 19 years old. And it sounds like it was kind of just a little bit of a dabble, but please do talk about that. And then let's just kind of talk about the evolution of you really transitioning into the bodybuilding training, the competing, and then I want to get back into the business side of things.
Yeah. So basically what happened was I got done with my shoulder. I had that shoulder surgery. I knew hockey was over and I joined a gym, and there was just a sign on the wall but there was a show, I want to say it was about 6 weeks away. And so I was like, screw it. Let's do this. And I mean, you know, I was definitely not a genetic wonder. No one was telling me I should do a bodybuilding show, you know. I didn't really know what to do. So I just ate 2 cans of tuna about every 2.5 hours for 6 weeks. And I got lean. Obviously, I wasn't eating any food. Hated every step. Like I said, did the show. I did okay. I think I took third. And I mean, it was enjoyable. I enjoyed the competing side of it. Um, but the process sucked, you know, and I definitely knew I didn't have any idea what I was doing. So I just kind of stepped away. But as I always say, it seems like the universe will help you decide where you need to be going. So being drawn back in by starting to work at that business, then of course I just wanted to be big. That was the next step, you know. And I think like most guys at that time, I asked a local guy that was a bodybuilder if he would write me up a diet to get big. So he did. And one of the meals that was part of every single day was Jack in the Box. I'd go get 3 chicken fajita pitas, and then he had me eat a slice of cheesecake every day. And of course, you do that for a while, and you're seeing changes, and you're eating all this food. And next thing you know, I'm like, well, maybe I need 2 of those meals, and maybe I need to eat more. And then it became just calories. How can I eat as many calories as possible? So of course, I did the whole, you know, I mean, I probably was eating out 2 or 3 times a day, every day. I got up to 260 pounds, which of course in my head, I was fucking huge. I was just a monster. I was fat as shit. I was not even remotely bodybuilding at that point. But of course, you're strong, and in clothes, you're big. So at that age, that was good enough. And I actually ended up dieting down at one point just to see where I was at. So like I said, I was 260. And by the time I reached 208 pounds, I still wasn't in shape. And that was a very crystal clear wake up call to how fat I had gotten. And it's funny because, you know, as you continue to evolve in bodybuilding, your understanding of what fat is changes. So I can't even imagine getting that heavy and thinking nothing of it now. Like I was so just like, I'm getting big, you know, it blows your mind. But yeah, I just kept getting pulled back. And in 2006, so I guess I was 25. I started working. The owner of the stores I was at, he used to work with a guy named JJ Marsh, that was a professional bodybuilder, and so I decided I would hire him and try to do a show. And that was the first time I dieted properly, and it was brutal. He was very old school. I mean, tilapia, green beans, the very, you know, what a lot of people in my era and before know to get in shape. And I got peeled, and it was hell. I remember how hard it was. And I think that is where the addiction came in. There was something about that feeling of, this is almost like, this is so hard to do, but I refuse to quit, or I refuse to cheat, or, you know what I mean? And that was kind of the beginning. But so we did really well. I did the Emerald Cup in 2006, and everything, I was peeled. And at the very, very end, we changed everything, which now I know you don't do. And next thing I was eating peas I hadn't had before. I was eating ground beef. I was a lot of things. And for whatever reason, my body didn't do well with that switch. And I put on like, God, 10 pounds. So I ended up getting 4th at the show. But I still looked good. I just, you know, I probably should have been a heavyweight, and I was actually a super heavyweight. You know, which I find to be very typical of super heavyweights at that level. Most of them should be heavies. But it was actually a really good class. So the 3 guys that beat me, I mean, one was Stan Efferding, who won the overall at the show. Kenny Gibson, which some guys would know who that is. And then one other guy from Utah, actually, who truly could have been a pro had he decided to. But I think he just changed his life course back then. But that was when I was bitten by the bug and was like, okay, I like this. So at that point, I got done with that show and I realized I wanted to be a bodybuilder. So I tinkered around for about a year, and that's when forums were going on. So I joined up a forum called Professional Muscle, and that's where I was introduced to Dante Trudel, or Dog Crap on the forums as he went by. And I saw at the time pictures from when he was working with Justin Harris, and I just realized that that's what I wanted to look like. Just one of those big, freaky, like I already knew at that point that I didn't have pretty bodybuilding genetics. So I reached out to Dante and I said, hey, I need you to train me. And he said no, but he was smart. He's a smart guy. He said, man, you're doing so good. I already know who you are. You don't need me. And of course, in the beginning, that stroked my ego enough that I was like, oh, good. And then about a week passed, and I'm like, no, not good. Like, I don't look like this guy. So I reached out again. I'm like, man, I really need you to take me on. And he said, man, I can't. I don't train people one-on-one anymore. I don't enjoy it. So I just kept nagging him. I'm like, look, I need this. And finally I said, look, let me hire you. If I alter anything you do, if I change anything, if I cheat, if I do anything, you can keep the money and never speak to me again. And at the time, as you know, I was back working in a supplement shop, so I was poor. And I was like, so he said, fine. He charged me $800, and that was it. We were off to the races, and I worked with him for about a year before doing my next show in 2008, where I won my first overall at the Border States. And that was kind of, at this point, I knew, like, this is what I want to do.
So what was it, kind of going from your first coach, JJ Marsh, then to Dante? What did Dante kind of bring to the table? Obviously, the majority of people are going to be listening to this know his training philosophy and all that, but just maybe as a coach, as a mentor, what did Dante kind of bring to the table for you? Do you feel like, Dusty, that helped you kind of go to that next bodybuilding level?
So Dante just, he taught me the importance of intensity. And I already trained really hard, but I trained very high volume, and it was very all over the place. Like, I would come into the gym with a plan of annihilating myself, but not really anything beyond that. So it was like, I'd get done with something and be like, well, I'm not dead. What else should I do? And the food portion, like I said, working with JJ was the first time I had the food down, but that was for a prep. Now I needed to learn how to eat for an off season. And I trust, for whatever reason, I think because of seeing Justin, seeing some of his other results, I had decided before we ever started that he was the key. So I lived and died on every word he said, did everything he said. And I think the trust played the biggest role. And then, of course, nothing breeds more trust like results. So when I started changing relatively quickly, from the lowered volume, from the higher intensity, from beating the logbook, I really enjoyed the logbook too, because back to the hockey days, it's a scoreboard. Something I always say to people is, a lot of people will say, like, you say, how was your workout? And they'll go, it was really good. It's really hard. And that can't be measured. What do you mean it's really hard? Was like, how hard? Whereas when you're beating a logbook, you can literally say that was the best workout of my entire life. I have never done better than that. And I really liked that aspect, because you would go into a set and it was almost stressful, because you're looking at your numbers from last time, and that was only 3 workouts ago for that body part, and you need to beat them. But you know what you need to do. And I find that having that knowledge, you kind of find a way, especially if you've got that gear in your head, where you're just, failure's truly not an option. And that became, like I said, that made every workout super fun, because it was a game. You could walk out of there, especially when you're, doing a year and a half off season, where you don't get the enjoyment of looking good and having a show, where I had to win every day. And that's something I still really live by, is I think everybody needs a win every day of their life. And so getting that with the scoreboard of the logbook was huge for me. And yeah, I mean, after that, man, it just evolved. Dante from then, quickly after our first year together, I mean, we talk every day now, and we don't ever talk about bodybuilding. So, now it's more financial advice and the good stuff, So, but no, it was definitely the perfect fit for me. But after I did that 2008 Border States, and I won the overall with a perfect score, and that's in October. So of course, nationals is in November. So everybody was like, "Oh, so you're gonna do nationals?" And I was like, "Hell no! I have an internet connection. I know what those guys look like." So I just told myself that I would keep rolling with Dante, and I would. So at the time, Muscular Development used to post the pictures from the shows every weekend. So every Sunday, I'd wake up and go to look at the guy that won the overall and just ask myself, could I hang with that guy? And for the longest time, the answer was no. And I told myself, if I can go a streak where I see that I could win or possibly win against every guy I see, then I'm ready to do a national level show. So about late 2009, I was like, you know what? I think it's time. It's time to start looking at a show. But I knew I wanted someone else to prep me for the shows. Dante's, that's not his deal, So again, like I told you, having followed Jay Cutler for so long, the only choice was Chris Aceto. So I reached out to him, and I knew it was a long shot. I mean, I'd only ever won one thing, and I'm not as good as his athletes, you know what I mean? But I was like, screw it. Reached out to him on DMs on one of the forums, probably RX or whatever. I think he was working with them at the time. Introduced myself, so I wanted to hire him, and surprisingly enough, he was like, "Okay, this is what it'll cost." So he sent me a mailing address. So I wanted him to know I was serious. At the time, I had obviously altered my life significantly on the financial side. So I went straight to the bank. I got a cashier's check, and I overnighted it to him so he'd have it the next day. I remember the first email I got from him was, "You don't ever have to waste $20 sending me a check again." So I was like, I told him, so I just wanted you to know I was serious. And he was like, okay. So I wanted him to get me ready for the USAs in 2010. This was late 2009. And so we prepped starting then. I followed every single thing he told me to do. And then finally, I can't remember, it was Christmas or something, but we'd been working together for months. And I said, hey, or no, it was actually early in 2010. I said, hey, before the prep starts, I wanted to ask you if you'd care if I take my wife out to dinner. And he was like, you haven't taken your wife out to dinner since we started? And I was like, no, I've been following the diet. And he was like, oh, all right. So he was like, yeah, of course. He said, the only thing I want you to do is take pictures the day after and keep track of what you eat. I want to see what happens. I said, okay. We went out, and I mean, of course, I was thinking this is like my last cheat meal for the end. So I ate like it was my goal to get fat that night. And I sent him pictures the next day, and he was like, man, that did you good. Okay, let's start having a cheat meal every weekend. So we started doing that, which was fun. And then finally we prepped, but prep was going super well. So I said, hey, what do you think about me jumping in junior nationals, which was 6 weeks before the USAs? And he's like, oh, absolutely. You'll be ready. And that show put me on the map, so to speak. I won my class. I did not win the overall. Matt Loudon won the overall that show. But the reason it actually did me so well to not win was after prejudging, everyone kind of assumed I was going to win. Like I was on the homepage of 4 different websites, and it was kind of a done deal in a lot of people's heads. And I ended up not winning the overall. And to be honest, I had no problem with it. Matt had a completely different look, a much prettier look. But it was very beneficial because, for example, when he won, he actually said in his interview, oh, I thought he was going to win. And, we had mutual respect. And like I said, I had no issue with it, but I didn't realize at the time it was such a blessing, because had I won Sunday, the internet would have talked about it. Monday, it wouldn't have mattered. Well, because not me, but a lot of people thought I got robbed, the conversation stayed on for weeks, you know, while I was prepping for the USAs, which gave me a lot of momentum going into that show. And the USAs came around, and I took fifth at my first one, but that was actually a huge accomplishment because a lot of people don't realize the game's changed so much. The top 10 from my 2010 USAs are all pros now. You know, Jason Hull won the overall, which we all knew he was going to win before that, weeks out from that show. But like, to give an idea, like I beat Steve Kuklo at that show, which is, you know, that'll be my claim to fame forever. Beat a bodybuilder who's much better than me one day, one time. But yeah, that was what kind of put me on the map. And I think that I was fortunate because at the time I was also doing YouTubes and things like that. People knew who I was, and no one had this confusion that I was some gifted bodybuilder. And I think that also played really well for me because most people who love bodybuilding aren't gifted bodybuilders. So it makes it easy to rally behind someone like me because it's like, well, he does a lot better than he should do based on genetics. And I kind of use that on the regular, and not as a marketing scheme, but as a fact. Like, if I can do this, and we all know it's not special, then who can't? You know, and I don't mean bodybuilding, but anything. You know, so that's kind of been the segue of life, so to speak.
So before we kind of continue with your competition history, talk about Chris Aceto. You know, I've had quite a few guys on the podcast that have been coached by him or still currently being coached by him. And, you know, they all have different stories. Jose Raymond's been a guest on here, and he had some good chatter about Chris. But what is it about Chris that you kind of appreciated right away? Obviously, you know, you knew that he worked with Jay Cutler, kind of just the same thing with Dante, right? Like there's that respect going into it. And that's why you reached out to these guys, because of who they've already worked with. But just like that personal connection between Chris and you, Dusty, talk about that a little bit. And what did Chris kind of bring to the table that you really appreciated from the get-go and still appreciate to this point?
I think the biggest thing I noticed with Chris is his style, which is he doesn't have a style. and I don't, people who follow from the outside would not understand what that means, but Chris watches everything. Like, for example, I said, you know, oh, I haven't eaten it. Well, then let me see what happens when you do eat a cheat meal. Okay, now let's do that on a regular. He likes to joke. He'll say things like there's no rules in bodybuilding. He'll text you that, and he'll purposely spell rules wrong, you know, with a Z. So it's kind of like the driving home point. And I've always enjoyed, number one, his humor, because he's very dry humor, very intelligent person. But on the bodybuilding side, he really oversimplifies things. And I think it's funny because I've seen people kind of try to challenge him because he oversimplifies things, and they think he does it because he doesn't know. He does it because you don't need to be fancy. You know, I look at Chris as somebody who understands that if you can't explain something to a fifth grader, then you don't really understand it. You know, he doesn't, you know, like, for example, one of the biggest things, so leading into that first junior nationals, this is our first show together. And, you know, I've done a couple shows. I've done one with JJ. So about a week before the show, I say, hey, Chris, what's the plan for the week of the show? What food should I have ready? So I send him that email. He responds with, I don't know. And I'm like, the hell? What do you mean you don't know? Like, that answer doesn't make sense to me at this point in my career. And I said, well, I'm like, what food should I have ready? You know, and he goes, well, I don't know. I mean, we'll see. So I was like, all right, well, I guess here's what I'm going to do. I knew I was going to be there for 3 days, for whatever it was. So I said, okay, there's 6 meals in a day. Currently, I've eaten whitefish, I've eaten chicken, I've eaten ground turkey, and I've eaten steak. So I'm going to make 24 meals of every single one of them so that I'm ready. Then I'm going to bring rice. I'm going to bring oatmeal. I'm going to buy potatoes when I get there. So basically, I had every option covered in my hotel room based on whatever. So, and we did. We just he would look at me before every meal for 3 days to decide what to eat next. And what it taught me, number one, was, and now I laugh because my first show I did, when I did the first overall I did that I won, the guy who I worked with sent me the entire last week, like, 2 weeks out. Here you go. So I knew exactly what to do. And of course, I did not look like I looked with Chris. But I really enjoyed the simplification of it. The communication was awesome. He wanted, and a lot of people look at it as a pain in the ass, but if you're serious about what you're doing, by the end, I was sending pictures daily, sometimes twice a day. Let's see what you look like after meal 3, And I mean, at the time, I was very clear on who his clients were. And I remember thinking to myself, like, this guy treats me like I'm his only client. I'm nobody. I've never done anything. I've never, I mean, yeah, I look good. But it just blew my mind. And another thing, like, so at the time I owned my stores. So my schedule was hell. I would do cardio in the morning and I'd get done at my stores around 8:30 p.m., come home, rest for 10 minutes. I had a system where I would like literally, dive in the pool to be somewhat not dirty, shower off, get dressed in clean clothes, go train, be done at, 11 o'clock at night or something like that. And one time I was maybe 4 weeks out, I got a text. This is like 11:30 at night in Arizona, which makes it, I don't know, 1 something in the morning in Maine. He's like, how was legs today? And I'm like, okay, how do you know I trained legs today? What are you doing awake? What? I mean, it became very, very clear he was very invested, and that was awesome because it gave me a level of confidence. And again, I've always been very aware of who I was. I had no dreams of grandeur of winning, the Flex Pro, let alone the Olympia. But going to that first show was a game changer. Like when I woke up the morning of prejudging for junior nationals, I was perfect. Like I knew there was nothing that could be better. And so I was backstage. Now this should be a big show for me. I mean, guys are pacing and they're pumping up early. And I was literally laying on the floor in my tracksuit, like half asleep. And the super heavies are all pumping up and I'm literally just like half asleep. And finally, Harvey, dogs. What's that? Damn deliveries. But so I woke up that morning, like I said, nuts. I was sitting backstage and finally Sally Ann, who worked for Dave Palumbo for RX Muscle, they knew I was working with Chris. So they were like, can you just like give us a peek so we can run out, we want to get a picture, but we want to run it up to be, watching on stage. So I was like, sure. And I just did like some light pump. And then I peeled down and I hit one most muscular shot. And that shot was everywhere that day. But I remember I hit that shot and she looked at me and goes, holy fuck. And then Larry Brown was working with them at the time. And he goes, I understand why you're so relaxed. Like it was definitely nuts. I've posted that picture 100 times since then, but I do remember that because I knew like I couldn't have been drier, I couldn't have been fuller. There's nothing he could have done better with what I had. So, and that was Chris from the beginning till the end. And the nice thing that I enjoy is I know enough people that worked with him and they all have the same story. It's like, how can you treat every client as if they're your only client? And no matter their level, I mean, he's working with guys winning the Olympia and then some schmuck out of Arizona that is never going anywhere. And he gives you the same attention. So, I learned a ton from him, both from bodybuilding and from business,
So I want to ask you, Dusty, because you just seem like a very like I know you're a very real dude, and you don't, like you said earlier, you didn't never had like this grand plan of like winning the Olympia or anything, because you're real with others, you're real with yourself. So kind of at the onset of you getting pulled into bodybuilding and knowing that you're going to just pursue this and see what happens. What was your mindset? I know kind of in the beginning, it was like to get huge, but once you started competing, you started having some competition success. Where was your mindset in terms of where you wanted to take this whole bodybuilding thing?
Well, like I said, I think that I think hard work breeds luck. And I got lucky in the way that, so the first show I did with JJ Marsh, after that show, I was working at my stores, which I did not own them yet at this point. And a guy came into the store. I met him, and he owned iForce Nutrition, which is a really small supplement company. And he saw me. He saw I was in shape. I think it was. I'm sorry, I said that backwards. This was before, because this was March. This was before I competed in April. And he said, "Hey, you want to come to the Arnold with me and work the booth for my new company?" And like, sure, why not? Can I get some money? Like, so he said, sure. So I went to the Arnold with him. And while we were there, I was starting to train and everything. And he saw me and obviously saw that I was in really good shape. And he said, "You want to do a photo shoot for the brand and we could just work something out?" And, he's a small company, doesn't have any money. I'm a nobody. And so it was like, yeah, why not? So we did a shoot, and I worked with him through. So after that show, I'll call it an affiliate before affiliates existed. He gave me supplements. And I was with him for like that year and a half after that show, leading into my first show in 2008. And when I won that overall at that show, they were sponsoring me at that point. They were paying me like $500 a month, and paid my entry fees and my hotel for the show, which is all awesome at this point, And as luck would have it, a friend of his that loved bodybuilding said, "Hey, do you care if I video the photo shoot the day after the show?" And he's like, "Oh, sure, go ahead." So I meet this guy, and he videos the shoot, and I'm just myself. We're having fun, whatever. And we kind of hit it off well. And the guy was like, "Maybe we should video some more stuff." Like, so they decided, all right, let's fly this guy out to Arizona and we'll film training or whatever. And it was all just, random. We had no idea what we were doing. So he started filming me, and we did the gym. And then I was like, oh, I told him I needed to go to Costco. I was like, I gotta go to Costco to buy some food. And he's like, "I'm gonna film it." And I'm like, okay, it seems dumb, but whatever. And that was my first Costco video that I think had 100 and some odd thousand views. And it was at that point, through, like I said, a little luck, that I realized there was a spot for me, and it wasn't on stage, So I grew with that company, and the guy who was filming, Todd, still does most of my videos. And since then, it's funny, but that was his beginning also. But he shot Jay many times, Dennis Wolf, Phil Heath. In the industry, everybody knows him. And he doesn't do it like, this is his fun. Like, he has a career, he makes real money. Like, he just loves bodybuilding, he loves that stuff, and puts out awesome content. So again, like, he put me on the map, and I did have some good fortune with myself early on. Like, when I joined the forums back then, everybody used to have some name, Blacksmith 2605. And right from jump, I was like, well, I want these people to know who I am. So my screen name was Dusty Hanshaw, because I was like, seems dumb to me. Why would I, and I'm not selling illegal drugs or doing anything bad. So, like, to me, it did not make sense to market myself under another name. And I bet you a lot of people wish they had realized that from back in the day, because I had earned respect off the stage before I earned it on the stage, So it did help. People knew who I was as I got better, and it just evolved. But it also, like I said, with the good fortune with the sponsorship and the videos, that was where I saw what I could do. And so we took advantage of that. And the only sad thing is so I wasn't smart enough at the time to realize I wasn't going to be with that company forever. I built up their YouTube. it was all me. And I don't mean all me as in I'm the special one. I mean, I was the one in the videos. And it was fine because, I mean, I spent 7 years with them and I was making more money than most pros by the end of my time with them. But in hindsight, I didn't have my own. And then what made it really ugly was one of the employees of that company who worked on their YouTube apparently had a falling out with the owner and deleted their entire YouTube channel. So I still have all those videos because Todd has them, but they're no longer a reference point in my career because they're gone. So that was definitely a learning experience. And I could have, because you got to remember in hindsight, I mean, we're talking, I think we started the YouTube in 2007. It was a lot easier to grow a YouTube back then than it is now. I mean, we had 100,000 followers quick. If I were to put in a ton of effort on YouTube right now, which I should, to get to 100,000 would take a long time. Like even with an established name, because in that world, you're not that established and, people don't, they just don't naturally fall to you. It's not easy to get a following. So, live and learn on some of the mistakes, but that's how I saw my window. And that's what's allowed me to continue to get paid for years and years. There's no company that hires me is saying, well, he's going to win some shows and get us on the map.
Perfect. So I want to get back into your competition history then. So you got second at junior nationals, fifth at your first USAs in 2010. What kind of unfolded after 2010 then for competing?
So after 2010, I decided I wanted a little more time to improve for the 2011 nationals. So I skipped USAs, I skipped North Americans, and I did the 2011 nationals. That show I told Chris before we started the prep, I just wanted to be completely sliced out of my mind. About 4 weeks out, I was ready. And in hindsight, of course, had I brought that look to the stage, I probably would have been in the mix to win. I would never be bold enough to say I would have won, but I would have definitely been in there with it being a possibility. We kept dieting, and I actually lost a bunch of size. You don't see it when you're just hunting for the getting better. And actually, at one point, I remember, you've got the knee pad for the lat pull downs. It never occurred to me that after a while, I had to lower it one more click. Now, the bones in my leg didn't get shorter. That should have been a pretty blatant sign that something bad was happening, but I didn't catch it. But I ended up getting 10th place, which was a huge fall from, I took a year and a half off to drop 5 placings. But I was peeled, and I didn't regret it. It was the hardest prep of my life. I actually met Jose at that show. It was so funny because, obviously I was disappointed. I come off stage and I hear this loud Boston accent that I've never heard before. You were fucking peeled. I don't give a shit what you placed. Nastiest guy in the show. And he's going on and on. And I'm thinking, this is Jose Raymond. Like, why is he talking to me? So I did that show and I said, that's it. We're doing nationals again next year. I'm going to get it right and whatever. So fast forward another year. This time I've got a bunch of personal issues. I do not look good. And I take 10th again. And at this point, I think a lot of people, and rightfully so, looked at 2010 as a fluke more than 2 more years, because let's just do math. You did 2 shows where you came in right, but they were 6 weeks apart. So that's kind of like one show. And now you're a 10th place guy 2 years in a row. So that show really set me off because I knew this one wasn't a mistake. This was just, and I knew that I sucked. Like, it was not good in hindsight. So I said, screw it. We're doing USAs right around the corner in July. And I came back and took 3rd in that show. And I was back, you know what I mean? Then I said, screw it. We're going straight to North Americans. So went to North Americans, and man, this is terrible. This is how old I'm getting. I think I got 5th at North Americans. It might have been 4th. But I went to North Americans, got 4th or 5th. And again, now I'm back in the mix. So that was okay. So I said, all right, that's it. we're going to take a year off. We'll do USA's again, 2014. And in 2014, I took third at the USA's again, but I lost to John Ward, which is a friend of mine. He got second, and then Nick Trudel won. And in my head, there's no way that I should have not been at least second in that show. We did make some mistakes. My tan was shit, whatever. So after that show, I was like, I'm doing North Americans, and I'm going to convince my friend John Ward to do North Americans with me because I have to beat him. And it was funny. He was actually in my house. I mean, we're still friends to this day, but I was like, you got to do North Americans, man. You got second. I'm doing it. You got to do it. You know, you only got to move up one placing to win. So 6 weeks later, it was North Americans. I remember I landed in North Americans, dropped my stuff, went in the hallway, took my first set of pictures. And as soon as I saw the picture from the back, I actually sent that picture to Chris by itself. And I said, they're all fucked. Like, I just knew. I'm like, we've got this time. You know, and fast forward 2 days, it was funny because the way they did the call out, Steve Weinberger, it was a big class. It's a small stage. So once everyone's out there, I was actually kind of in the back, and they call 4 guys. And then I hear him say, where's Dusty? And he was talking, so he gets my number and he calls me out. And as I start to walk out, I'm the 5th guy called out. So I was about to walk to the edge, you know, to the side, and he literally goes to the middle. And I'm like, there we go. Like, I knew right then and there it was done. So ended up winning that. And that was, it was funny. A lot of guys, and Jose actually flew up or drove up to come see me in Pittsburgh, win that show. And we went to dinner afterwards, and it was just normal, you know. And Jose was like, man, you don't even seem excited. And I said, well, I was just checking a box. Like, I wanted to get this done, and it's off the plate. I said, but now I'm the worst professional bodybuilder in the world. And he laughed, and he's like, it's a valid point. I'm like, so here I am at the bottom again, you know. And I knew at this point that that now it was going to be like, can I get in the top 10? You know what I mean? Like, it's just, so not only all the years of guys who have beaten me, but all the years before that, plus the super freaks, you know. So I was very understanding of where my career was at this point. I had temporary hopes of, like, you know, being in the higher end, you know, not of big shows, of like small shows. And after a couple shows, I realized, like, okay, I can pour everything into this, and maybe get in the top 5 one day, but like, I'm never going to be one of them, you know, because what happens is your structural weaknesses are just highlighted, because now everyone's great, but they don't have wide structured hips, or, you know what I mean? It was very apparent to me, which I appreciated, because I feel bad for people who don't have self-awareness. I see them chasing this carrot that's not there, you know? So I actually immediately stepped away. I don't want to say, like, I enjoyed competing. I loved dieting, but I understood that for me, the important part was marketing the diet, marketing the prep, getting the videos, keeping people interested in me. And that's what I did. And it was amazing, because actually one show I actually took dead last. And obviously, I don't care who you are, that's a blow. You're like, holy shit, I was the worst bodybuilder at the show. And the next day, all my social media was blown up. And I'm like, they don't even care. Like, they know I'm not, like, it's like, it was, and I knew, but it was still like, wow, they really don't give a shit. I mean, I took last. I was the worst. And it wasn't even like, I should have gotten 15th instead of 16th. It was like, does it matter? Like, you were not in the mix. But that really, I guess I was born into bodybuilding at the perfect time for someone like me. You know, because if it was the 90s, I would have never turned pro. And I surely wouldn't have gotten a name. Then same thing. Had we done 2011 perfectly, and let's say worst case scenario, I would have won, then those years of grinding and people getting to know me wouldn't have happened. And then I would have just been a terrible pro bodybuilder and disappeared. So I really look back and I'm thankful for how everything shook out. I think some guys don't realize that winning right away can really screw you in this world, because again, well, now you're the worst pro, and you got years, because again, that was 2011. I turned pro in 2014. So I had 3 years to improve and 3 years to build a brand that I wouldn't have had if I turned pro in 2011 and just started getting my ass kicked as a pro.
Okay, so just quickly, what was, do you feel like, or what is, from your estimation, Dusty, kind of the highlight of you competing in the IFBB?
You know what's funny? Highlight of being a pro had never had anything to do with the stage for me. I actually, even as an amateur, I knew I didn't love competing. It was the preps. It was the building the fans. It was, going places and people saying that either they knew you or it impacted them. That was always a thing for me. The highlight, if I had to do a stage highlight, was I convinced Jose to do the open at my first pro show, because I wanted somebody who I had, was a mentor and a friend to just come compete. So to compete with him was everything, just to say I did it, you know what I mean? And I mean, that was fun. I mean, he came to my house. It was in Arizona. So he came to the house. We trained for a few days. We did all of our progress pictures together. We both worked with Chris. That was fun. But outside of that, it was always just, I loved the hotel pictures. I used to always say that I could prep to a show and never go to the show. Like it didn't, even like I said, even when I won, even I was kind of like, I'm not that excited. Like, I'm glad I did it. But I mean, I see people like fall on the stage and get all emotional. I was kind of like, I knew in the morning I was going to turn pro. I turned pro, and I also understood that it wasn't going to change my life. I mean, at that point, I was already doing extremely well from bodybuilding. My business was doing well. So that was a personal success more than anything. You know what I mean? I think that allows you to enjoy the process more too, because I think the people who get so tied up in how they place may not love the sport as much as those of us who just love doing it. Like, I'm done now. I have no interest in competing ever again. And I train and everything like I'm going to someday because I actually love doing it. I see people that online and things that will be in prep and they're complaining, oh, I can't wait till this is over. And I want to message them and be like, bro, stop. No one's making you do this. And if you don't enjoy it, what the hell is the point? Especially when they're trying to turn pro. I'm like, so let's say you do it and you turn pro. Now you're going to hate your career. Like, you got one life, man. If you don't love this, stop. Like, no one cares. I promise you that,
For sure. So I want to, are you good with a little bit longer? We've been going for almost 60 minutes.
That's fine. I got a little longer.
Okay. I want to be respectful of your time. I do want to talk before we wrap it up about business a little bit. Now there's the business side of bodybuilding, but then there's also the business outside of bodybuilding. I want to talk about, you had the opportunity to buy those supplement stores that you started working at, and then just talk about, maybe some of the importance of investments and building some of those revenue streams outside of quote unquote bodybuilding, if you don't mind, Dusty.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's very simple. I think that the key to happiness is comfort. It's not things. And I have some things, but I don't feel comfortable unless the incoming money far exceeds the outgoing money. So I've just always been mindful of that. My dad, like I said, he did very well, but he was a guy who, if he made $1 million, he could find a way to be poor. If he made 5 million, he could find a way to be poor. We had so much shit. Like, I mean, after my mother and him got divorced, he lived alone in a 7,000 square foot house. I'm like, so I learned a lot from him on what to do. I learned a lot from him on what not to do. So and don't get me wrong, early on when I first started making money, I made all the typical mistakes. I mean, I had a 7 series when I was a kid. Like, I needed that, you know what I mean? Like, just stupid things in hindsight that were so important then. I'm like, you have an $1,100 car payment. You're 20 something years old. You're a moron. Um, but you know what I think is interesting, and I'm going to kind of bring this full circle in 2 ways. One way you're not really even expecting. Um, I've made a lot of good decisions. I've made a lot of bad decisions. I was able to buy that business because I had a bunch of money saved up. Um, and at the time, uh, I did a loan directly through the guy who owned the business. So we didn't go through a bank. He held the note. I had a business partner, but I needed money in hand to be part of it. And the only reason was able to jump on that opportunity is because I had money. Um, and that's something I can't stress to people enough. Like, if you don't have liquid cash, you might get opportunities, but you might not be able to jump on them, you know? So do your best to avoid the trap of buying things that then will not allow you to buy assets or opportunities. Um, it's funny, I've gotten a lot of credit for being like some well beyond what's deserved, I'll say, for business success. My business motto was, you know, I bet on myself. I will put money on myself, and I will work really hard. I might make 1,000 mistakes, but I'll make it work. You know, when I took my first giant loan to buy a business, um, that was it. I was like, well, this is going to work because it has to. Because if not, I'm going to go bankrupt and I'm going to be screwed. So, you know, that was essentially how I have done everything. And like I said, I've made countless errors that cost me thousands and thousands of dollars. Um, I've lost amounts of money that most people they would shit their pants if they knew how much money I've lost in business moves. But it also taught me that people only remember your wins. You know, like, I've done well. Financially, things are very good for me right now, but it is funny because the misses, I'm like, well, I lost X amount of money all at once. And it blows your mind because I also obviously have become friends with a lot of people in the industry who are very successful at the same story. It's like they've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in things and no one ever knows. But then, for example, another thing I think is cool is I do get a lot of credit for doing pretty well for myself financially. But then, like last year when I got sick, or this year, I guess it was, I end up in a coma. And while I'm in a coma, I wake up to find out that they've started a GoFundMe and people have donated over $100,000. I thought that was a cool thing because I'll be honest, I would not have done one of those myself. And I appreciate, and I'm glad it was done, because if you guys saw my medical bills, that would have been a rough situation. I did have insurance, but that doesn't cover everything, believe it or not, people. And being gone, my business was essentially, my online training business was gone when I got back. I had a lot of clients that stuck around, but more than half were gone. But I thought that was cool because I asked a few people I knew, like, why would you donate to me? Because I do have insurance. It's not like people don't know I've done pretty well. So the fact that somebody, especially people, I mean, people that don't have a lot of money are donating $30, $50, that's a lot of money for them. You know what I mean? And then I know people who are, you know, that I know on a personal level, that were very well off, they're donating $10,000. And they also knew my situation. It was humbling to say the least. But again, because a lot of people understood that you know, I don't want to say I didn't need it, because obviously I did need it to help my situation, but I could have survived. I wouldn't have went bankrupt or anything like that. And what it was is a lot of people felt like that I had earned that, had given back. And that was like a huge, the money was enormous, but it was almost hard to even take in the other side of it. Cause I'm like, you know, like I said, people who are giving more than they can, which could be as low as $50, but it's like, you know, I mean, you know how it is. Like, anytime you decide to give $1 or something, that's your dollar. You earn that shit. You know what I mean? And you're not spending on yourself, your family, your kids. That was a big deal, but it definitely was even more big because, like I said, it made me feel like, okay, I've done something well, you know. And then fast forward, like, same thing with John Meadows. John Meadows is a millionaire, but I don't remember how much his GoFundMe was, but it was hundreds of thousands of dollars, because that's how many people lives were, benefited by him. I mean, I donated to it as well, but it's just like, that was a humbling thing to see, So I think, I'm trying to tie this into businesses. You can be a successful business person, but it used to be this whole thing, like you had to be this hardcore person and, you know, kill everything and, only worry about you. And I think you can see now, like, don't get me wrong, you gotta grind and you gotta want to be successful. And yes, you gotta stomp some people down along the way sometimes if they deserve it. But a solid business person is a solid person also. And I think that that's probably my greatest achievement in bodybuilding and business, was actually this situation, was realizing that I've had some success. I've shared enough that people gave back to me. And now it's also really made me aware moving forward, like, okay, I need to do more, because I do feel like it's nice to know people thought that, but God, I want to feel like I really deserve it. You know what I mean? Because I don't think people could understand how humbling that is. You're coming out of a coma, you're learning how to walk, literally, and then also seeing that as like, I mean, it took a week for me to even put up a post about it, because I was trying to find the words. Like, let's give me $120,000. You know what I mean? Like, holy shit. You know what I'm saying? So, but yeah, I'm on the business side, man. I think that the biggest thing that I think bodybuilding and business relate to is work. I really don't think that people realize that to become a successful bodybuilder, and when I say successful, I just mean better than you are today, consistency over time. You consistently put in the work, day in, day out, the food, the training, the sleep, you will be better. And I think that that's the same in business. It's the reason, a lot of people will ask, why did I sell my business when I did? It's because I hit a crossroads where I was only being an okay bodybuilder and an okay businessman. I couldn't do both at the best of my ability. And I said to myself, okay, business will pay me more, but I can't bodybuild later. So I'm going to sell the business, take my money, and then put more focus into bodybuilding. And when I'm done bodybuilding, I can own another business again, a retail store, whatever I want to do. But I knew I couldn't be great at both. And that was the attitude I took, because I remembered, I'd be waking up and thinking, okay, I gotta do my cardio, I gotta get my food in, I gotta do this, I gotta train after work. And my competition in business, they were only thinking about business. I have to slay business today, and it's just very obvious that I couldn't be the best at that while being a bodybuilder. So, as much as I appreciate the accolade of people saying I'm good at business, I'm better at business now that I'm retired. Like, I don't nail my food every day anymore. I don't have to, it's a priority. It's not the highest priority. My clients are a much higher priority than I am. You know what I'm saying? So if it's miss a meal or get these last 3 people's things done, they're getting their shit done.
Very cool. So just to wrap things up, what is kind of the future for you, Dusty? I know you're kind of back on the grind in terms of your training with Jordan Peters. You're doing 75 hard. Obviously, all of this stuff I gather through your social media, but just, in the future, what are you building towards? What's kind of your motivation or your vision, your focus?
Right now, I mean, motivation is simple when you've almost died. It's that part's not hard at all. The clarity that every day might be your last makes things very, very simple. And it's trite to someone. Well, it's trite to a lot of people. Some people get it. But some people who haven't been through it don't understand, like, it's game changing. So every day is the best day for me right now. And I mean, we're 5 months removed, so that's never going anywhere. I remind myself regularly that I almost didn't wake up. As far as life and business, I plan on, so I'm back to focusing on bodybuilding, but purely for me. I just want to be better than I've ever been, just to do it, which is fun. I've got great sponsors that back me, that are enjoying it. Fans are enjoying it. And I think that they're getting behind the fact that it's not for something bigger. It's literally selfish. I want to do this. I don't have to. I want to do this. I want to take it as far as I can. I am older. I'm 40 years old. So in the next year, I'll start changing the focus. I do plan on, I'll always be a bodybuilder. I'll always be in the industry. I'll always do this stuff, but I'm gonna have to change my focus. I'll have to come down in size. And I'm going to look for a new challenge. I don't know what it is yet, but something that I have to chase. That's just part of my life. And I need a personal chase and a business chase. So I'll figure out what that is, but I definitely see myself getting back to being athletic. I laugh when people are like, oh man, I'm like, there's nothing athletic about me. I'm fortunate to walk. So I definitely want to get back to that. But after I finish this goal for my personal side, and a lot of people are surprised by that because they see my health and they don't realize that was a fluke incident. My health is actually awesome. The only reason I'm making this decision is because it's not for me personally. I don't like to ever put my views on anybody else, but being 40 years old, 41, 42, 43, I shouldn't be hanging around 300 pounds too much longer. So I want to get there. I want to enjoy it. I want to check that box for myself, move on. I'm already have a couple other business things going that will become the forefront, and people will be very clear what they are once these other things are handled. But business will get fun again. And I've got some people that I'm bringing along. I don't want to say bringing along for the ride because they're doing their job and they're doing the work, but I'm finding a lot of joy in helping other people do what I've done. Because I think what's great about it is it's completely reproducible. You can't reproduce Phil Heath, but you can absolutely reproduce Dusty Hanshaw. And I think that that's fun when a lot of people see, and I get hate for it also, but I love that because it's like, all I did was work harder than you, or I wanted it more. I had a different view of it, but I can teach somebody else how to do it, and that's fun. I mean, there's nothing more valuable. I'm sure you've had it at some point in your life where you didn't do the work, but you definitely gave them the path. And it's a win for you, that more than your own wins. You know what I mean? So when the people who I'm working with and guiding are enjoying the same situation that I am, I'll probably get as much enjoyment out of that as I have my own personal success.
Very cool. And just for the listeners that maybe haven't been following along on your Instagram, what is this kind of final push or what you are connecting with Jordan Peters to kind of accomplish?
Well, at the moment, because we haven't put it out there, because I haven't been working with Jordan yet, but just because he's busy. We're going to start, and then we haven't. We'll figure that part out. And that's not a bad or a negative. It's just I hired him before I got sick. Then when I came back, for those who don't know, I was in a coma, had to learn how to walk and basically start from the bottom again. So my first step right now was just to get back to where I was. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm there. And what I mean is it's just time now. In the last literally week, things have changed where my body just moves like it used to. I mean, I deadlifted 585 for 9 yesterday. I was getting it for 6 a week ago. So things are clicking. So really all I'm trying to do is just, I enjoy training. So getting the training back to where it was, which like I said, I pretty much think it is now. I am going to push the diet harder now and really push. I want to be a very solid, lean, like 310. My goal is, my birthday's in May. I would like to be the best bodybuilder I've ever been in May. And I don't mean, like, I probably won't be in shape, like contest shape, but I'm going to be in shape, like very lean, very good. Like I said, somewhere around that 310 mark would make me very happy. And at that point, we'll decide from there. I work a lot of it through the sponsors as well, what benefits them at the time, and just kind of sharing the journey, So I am actually going to talk to Jordan here, and probably in January start posting my process on his website, on his app, just because I think people will enjoy it. It's no longer a comeback. It's more just get better than I've ever been, just to prove I can to myself. And then I can move on. I couldn't move on until I did that. And I realized that after I got sick. I said, I've taken a few years and focused on business, and I didn't really get to enjoy the bodybuilding. I want to enjoy it one more time so I can be satisfied. Because I think that's why a lot of guys can't quit, is they left something. I want to push it through. And again, it's not for the stage. So, to anybody that's wondering, that will not happen. It'll be just for me, and obviously to share, and that's it.
Awesome. Dusty, I just want to say thank you for taking some time out of your day today to chop it up with me. If you have any final thoughts or anything you want to share with myself and the listeners, go ahead and do that. If anybody doesn't know who you are that's listening to this, they don't know where they can find you, go ahead and just share some of that social media as well, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate it. No, obviously my Instagram is just Dusty Hanshaw 08. That's where I do most of my stuff. I do have a YouTube, which will get more active again this year, which is Dusty Hanshaw. And then of course, sponsors, Condemned Labs, do a lot of stuff for them. Trained by JP, I do all their clothing and stuff. So make sure you're keeping an eye on their page. And actually on the 21st, we're doing a winter drop, so you don't want to miss that one. And then finally, the big one is Transcend HRT. That's a company I do. So a lot of your listeners, of course, if you're 30 and up, chances are you should get your blood work, and you don't have to get old anymore, so to speak. You can keep your hormones healthy. It's a completely legal way to make sure that you're healthy. Again, if you're looking to become a freak bodybuilder, and this is a clean thing. So bodybuilders who think that this is some loophole, it is not. But a great route for health for men and women. So something I promote pretty hardcore. And that's about it, man. Just hope that some people can follow along. And then obviously also, I know a lot of people don't do their own social media. If you email me or you message me on social media or you comment, I'm the one that answers. So if you have any questions, please hit me up. And I do my very best to get them all.
Cool. And obviously you are a co-host of a pretty awesome podcast. I know I look at my podcast, information on YouTube, and the ones that are watching my podcast on YouTube are tuning into It's Just Bodybuilding. So for any of my listeners that don't know, Dusty and Ron Partlow have It's Just Bodybuilding podcast. It's a great podcast. So thank you so much, Dusty. Those of you that are listening, tuning in through YouTube, once again, I appreciate you joining us on another episode of Behind the Muscle podcast. I appreciate you. 3 things I would ask, if you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube. That's important because I release all of these episodes first on YouTube and then shoot them out to my other podcast platforms. Second, if you are on YouTube, leave a comment, your favorite part of Dusty's story or what we discussed today. Just put that in the comment section there on YouTube. And finally, share this episode on your Instagram stories, tag Dusty and tag Behind the Muscle. And finally, I will leave you all with this. Remember, behind the muscle, there's always a story. We'll catch you guys later.